For thousands of years, the lost city of Atlantis has remained one of history's greatest mysteries. Many believe it vanished beneath the ocean after a great catastrophe. But what if its location was never truly lost? Some ancient traditions claim that Thoth, the keeper of wisdom, recorded knowledge from a time before the flood, a time when advanced civilizations existed. In the Emerald Tablets, there are passages that some interpret as clues, describing lands beyond the waters, powerful cities, and knowledge preserved after destruction. Could these be references to Atlantis? And if so, did Thoth intentionally leave hints for future generations? Tonight, we explore the possibility that the location of Atlantis was hidden in symbolic language, waiting to be understood by those who seek it, not as a map, but as a message. Because sometimes ancient knowledge is not lost, only misunderstood. The story begins with Plato, who first introduced Atlantis in his dialogues Timaeus and Creatus. He described it as a mighty island empire that challenged ancient Athens before being swallowed by the sea. His account was brief, almost frustratingly so, yet it was enough to ignite centuries of speculation. Egypt, Greece, and countless other cultures carried echoes of floods and vanished lands. And into this chorus stepped Thoth, the god who measured time, recorded truth, and guarded wisdom. Thoth's role as scribe of the gods makes him central to this mystery. If Atlantis was real, surely he would have preserved its memory. The Emerald Tablets attributed to him are filled with cryptic passages about cycles of destruction and rebirth, about lands beyond the waters, and about wisdom hidden until humanity is ready. Some scholars dismiss these as allegory, while others insist they are coded references to Atlantis. Imagine Thoth, quill in hand, smiling as he writes, "Atlantis lies where you least expect it." Was he teasing future generations, or protecting them from knowledge too powerful to be revealed too soon? The ambiguity is what makes the story endure. Atlantis is not just a lost city. It is a puzzle, a riddle carved into myth, waiting for seekers to interpret. And so, the sands of Egypt whisper, the pyramids stand, and the Sphinx gazes eastward. Beneath their silence may lie the truth of Atlantis, preserved not in maps but in messages, waiting for those who listen carefully enough to hear. If you love mythology and history from all cultures and forbidden ancient stories, subscribe, because this channel reveals the secrets behind every myth. And let me know from where you're watching, whether it's from a cozy bed, a couch, or hiding under the blanket, pretending you're in Atlantis itself. Atlantis is more than a story. It is a mirror reflecting humanity's deepest desires and fears. For centuries, people have been captivated by the idea of a lost civilization that once thrived in wisdom, power, and beauty, only to vanish beneath the waves. The fascination endures because Atlantis is not just about geography, it is about possibility. The allure lies in the what if. What if there was a time when humanity reached heights of knowledge far beyond what we imagine today? What if that wisdom was lost, waiting to be rediscovered? Atlantis becomes a symbol of both nostalgia and hope, a reminder that greatness may have existed before us and could exist again. Part of the fascination comes from the mystery itself. Plato gave us only fragments, leaving the rest to imagination. Those fragments are like puzzle pieces without a box cover. We know they belong to something, but we cannot see the full picture. That absence invites speculation, and speculation invites stories. Each generation fills the gaps with its own dreams, turning Atlantis into a canvas for human imagination. Atlantis also fascinates because it embodies both triumph and tragedy. It was said to be a place of immense wealth, advanced architecture, and powerful fleets. Yet it fell because of arrogance and imbalance. This duality makes it timeless, a warning against hubris, but also a tantalizing vision of what humanity might achieve. The story has been retold in countless ways by philosophers, mystics, explorers, and even novelists. Some see it as allegory, others as literal history. Some place it in the Atlantic Ocean, others in the Mediterranean, and still others beneath the ice of Antarctica. The fact that it can be reimagined endlessly is part of its charm. Atlantis is not fixed, it is fluid, like the waters that supposedly swallowed it. And then there is the emotional pull. Atlantis speaks to our longing for connection to something greater, something ancient and profound. It whispers that the world may hold secrets we have not yet uncovered, that beneath the sands or the seas lies wisdom waiting to be found. That whisper is enough to keep us searching, generation after generation. Atlantis fascinates us because it is both a mystery and a metaphor. It is the dream of a golden age, the fear of losing it, and the hope that knowledge endures, even when civilizations fall. It is not just a lost city, it is a story that refuses to be forgotten. To understand the mystery of Atlantis, and why some believe its secrets were preserved, we must first meet the figure at the center of so many ancient traditions, Thoth, known to the Egyptians as Jehuti. Thoth was more than a god, he was the embodiment of wisdom, writing, and the eternal balance of truth. Thoth's role was vast and complex. He was credited with inventing hieroglyphs, giving humanity the gift of language and record-keeping. He measured time, calculated the movements of the stars, and ensured that the universe remained in harmony. In myths, he often appeared as a mediator, settling disputes among the gods with calm logic and precise words. Where chaos threatened, Thoth restored balance. But Thoth was not only a divine accountant of the cosmos, he was also a guardian of hidden knowledge. Temples dedicated to him were said to contain sacred texts filled with wisdom about medicine, astronomy, mathematics, and the mysteries of the soul. Priests who served Thoth were custodians of this knowledge, passing it down carefully, often cloaked in symbolic language, so that only the worthy could understand. It is this reputation as keeper of wisdom that connects Thoth to the legend of Atlantis. If a great civilization fell beneath the waves, who better than Thoth to preserve its memory? The emerald tablets, attributed to him, are said to contain cryptic passages about cycles of destruction and rebirth, about lands beyond the waters, and about truths hidden until humanity is ready. Whether literal or metaphorical, these writings have fueled the belief that Thoth left behind clues to Atlantis, encoded in symbols and riddles. Thoth's influence extended far beyond Egypt. The Greeks identified him with Hermes, calling him Hermes Trismegistus, thrice great Hermes. In this form, he became central to Hermetic philosophy, a tradition that emphasized hidden wisdom, cosmic laws, and the unity of all things. Through this blending of cultures, Thoth's legacy spread across the ancient world, shaping mystical traditions that still echo today. So who was Thoth? He was the scribe of the gods, the measurer of time, the guardian of wisdom, and perhaps the keeper of humanity's greatest secret. Whether myth, metaphor, or memory, Thoth stands as the figure who bridges the known and the unknown, the visible and the hidden. And if Atlantis was ever real, it is through Thoth that its story may have survived. Thoth's reputation in Egyptian tradition was not simply that of a god among many. He was revered as the divine custodian of wisdom itself. His role extended far beyond the temples and myths, shaping the very way Egyptians understood truth, balance, and the preservation of knowledge. To them, Thoth was the one who ensured that the universe remained in harmony, recording every event with precision and safeguarding the secrets of creation. As the scribe of the gods, Thoth was believed to have invented writing, giving humanity the ability to record history, laws, and sacred teachings. This act alone elevated him from a divine figure to a bridge between mortals and eternity. Writing was not merely a tool for communication. It was a way to preserve truth against the erosion of time. In this sense, Thoth became the guardian of memory, ensuring that wisdom would not vanish even when civilizations rose and fell. His association with balance was equally important. Egyptians believed in Mat, the principle of truth and cosmic order. Thoth was the one who measured and maintained this balance, weighing the hearts of the dead against the feather of truth in the afterlife. In this role, he was not only a recorder but a judge, ensuring that justice was upheld and that chaos did not overwhelm the world. Legends also describe Thoth as the keeper of hidden knowledge. Temples dedicated to him were said to contain scrolls and texts filled with advanced wisdom, astronomy, medicine, mathematics, and spiritual truths. Much of this knowledge was cloaked in symbolic language, accessible only to initiates who had proven themselves worthy. This secrecy reinforced the idea that wisdom was sacred, not to be misused or revealed carelessly. It is this aspect of Thoth that connects him to the legend of Atlantis. If a great civilization fell beneath the waves, Thoth would have been the one to preserve its memory, encoding its truths in texts or symbols that could survive catastrophe. The emerald tablets, attributed to him, are often interpreted as containing references to cycles of destruction and rebirth, perhaps even hints of Atlantis itself. Thoth's legacy as keeper of knowledge reminds us that wisdom is not only about discovery but about preservation. He represents the belief that truth endures, hidden, if necessary, until humanity is ready to honor it. In this way, Thoth is not just a god of writing, he is the eternal librarian of the cosmos, guarding secrets that may one day change how we see our past. The Emerald Tablets are among the most enigmatic texts ever associated with ancient wisdom, attributed to Thoth in Egyptian tradition and later to Hermes Trismegistus in Greek thought. They are said to contain secrets of the cosmos, the soul, and the cycles of civilizations. Whether they are genuine relics of antiquity or later creations wrapped in myth, the tablets have become central to the legend of hidden knowledge and, for some, clues to the mystery of Atlantis. The tablets are often described as inscribed slabs of green stone, shimmering with timeless authority. Their words are not straightforward instructions, but riddles, written in symbolic language that demands interpretation. They speak of the unity of all things, the eternal cycles of destruction and rebirth, and the hidden truths that lie beyond ordinary perception. For seekers, they are less a manual and more a mirror, reflecting the reader's own understanding back at them. One of the most intriguing aspects of the Emerald Tablets is their emphasis on preservation. They suggest that wisdom can survive catastrophe, concealed until humanity is ready to receive it. This theme resonates strongly with the story of Atlantis. If a great civilization fell beneath the waves, perhaps its knowledge was safeguarded in texts like these, encoded in symbols that would endure long after the city itself was gone. The tablets also highlight the role of Thoth as guardian of truth. He is portrayed not only as a recorder of events, but as a teacher, guiding initiates toward enlightenment. His words are layered, offering simple lessons on balance and justice to the uninitiated, while hiding deeper cosmic truths for those who can read between the lines. This duality makes the tablets endlessly fascinating. They are both accessible and mysterious, both clear and cryptic. Over the centuries, the emerald tablets have influenced countless traditions. Alchemists in the Middle Ages saw them as guides to transformation, both physical and spiritual. Mystics interpreted them as maps to higher consciousness. Modern seekers continue to study them, convinced that they hold keys to humanity's forgotten past. Whether literal artifacts or symbolic creations, the emerald tablets endure because they embody the idea that wisdom is eternal. They whisper that knowledge is never truly lost, only hidden, waiting for those who seek it with patience and humility. And in that whisper, some hear echoes of Atlantis, preserved not in stone walls, but in words carved into legend. Floods are among the most enduring motifs in human mythology, appearing in cultures separated by oceans and centuries. The idea of a great deluge that swept across the earth, erasing civilizations and forcing humanity to begin anew, is so widespread that it almost feels like a collective memory. For those who connect Atlantis to these traditions, the flood becomes the stage on which the lost city met its end. In Mesopotamia, the Epic of Gilgamesh tells of Utnapishtim, a man warned by the gods to build a great boat before the waters consumed the land. His survival ensured that life continued after the flood, and his story became one of the earliest written accounts of catastrophe and renewal. In India, the tale of Manu describes a wise man who was guided by a divine fish to build a vessel, preserving humanity and sacred knowledge. In Greece, Deucalion and Pyrrha survived a flood sent by Zeus, repopulating the earth by casting stones that transformed into people. Even in the Americas, indigenous traditions speak of waters rising to cleanse the world, leaving only a few survivors to rebuild. These stories share common themes: divine warnings, survival through wisdom or obedience, and the preservation of knowledge or life. The flood is not merely destruction. It is a reset, a cleansing of imbalance, and a chance for renewal. Atlantis fits neatly into this pattern. Plato described its downfall as punishment for arrogance, a civilization too proud and powerful to remain in harmony with the gods. The flood that swallowed Atlantis echoes the same motif found across cultures: catastrophe as consequence, survival as lesson. For those who see Thoth as the keeper of wisdom, the flood myths take on added significance. If knowledge was at risk of being lost, Thoth would have ensured its preservation, whether in texts, temples, or symbolic language. The emerald tablets, with their references to cycles of destruction and rebirth, seem to echo this theme. Wisdom survives disaster, hidden until humanity is ready to rediscover it. The universality of flood myths suggests that they may reflect more than imagination. Perhaps they recall real events: rising seas at the end of the Ice Age, sudden storms, or local disasters magnified into legend. Or perhaps they are symbolic, teaching that civilizations must remain humble or risk being swept away. Either way, the flood remains central to the story of Atlantis. A watery curtain that hides the city from view, while reminding us that balance must always be preserved. Long before the neat timelines of textbooks, humanity has whispered of ages that existed before recorded history. These whispers speak of civilizations that rose, flourished, and fell, leaving behind only fragments of memory in myth and legend. Atlantis is often placed within this shadowy realm, a city so advanced that its existence challenges the conventional story of human progress. Archaeology tells us that organized civilization began around 5,000 years ago in Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Indus Valley, yet myths from cultures across the world hint at something older. They describe golden ages when people lived in harmony with the cosmos, when knowledge of the stars, mathematics, and architecture was already profound. The idea that such civilizations existed before history is tantalizing, though evidence remains elusive. Some researchers point to megalithic structures as possible clues. Sites like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, built over 11,000 years ago, suggest that complex societies may have existed far earlier than previously believed. The precision of its carvings and the organization required to construct it challenge the notion that humans of that era were simple hunter-gatherers. Similarly, the pyramids of Egypt and the stone cities of South America fuel speculation that ancient peoples possessed knowledge we do not fully understand. Atlantis fits neatly into this narrative. Plato's account places its downfall 9,000 years before his own time, which would mean it existed long before the rise of known civilizations. If true, Atlantis would represent a forgotten chapter of human history, erased by catastrophe but remembered in myth. For those who believe Thoth preserved its memory, the emerald tablets become a bridge between the world we know and the world we have forgotten. Of course, mainstream historians caution against leaping too quickly from myth to fact. They argue that flood stories and tales of lost cities may be symbolic, teaching lessons about balance and humility rather than recording literal events. Yet the persistence of these stories across cultures suggests that they may contain echoes of real experiences, perhaps memories of rising seas at the end of the Ice Age, or disasters that wiped out coastal settlements. Civilizations before history remain a mystery, but they remind us that the human story may be deeper than we imagine. Atlantis, whether real or symbolic, embodies that possibility, that wisdom existed long before our records, and that its memory still waits, hidden in myth, for us to rediscover. Ancient texts rarely speak in plain words. Instead, they weave meaning through symbols, metaphors, and allegories, creating layers of interpretation that challenge readers across generations. This symbolic language was not accidental, it was intentional, designed to protect sacred knowledge from misuse and to ensure that only those prepared to understand could unlock its secrets. In Egypt, hieroglyphs themselves were a form of symbolic writing. A single image could carry multiple meanings depending on context, ritual, or the reader's level of initiation. A bird might represent flight, spirit, or even a specific god. To the untrained eye, these symbols were decorative. To the initiate, they were keys to cosmic truths. Thoth, as the god of writing and wisdom, was believed to have crafted this symbolic system, embedding layers of meaning that could endure through time. The emerald tablets, attributed to Thoth, are filled with such language. They speak of cycles of destruction and rebirth, lands beyond the waters, and hidden chambers of wisdom. These phrases are not straightforward directions, but symbolic references. Some interpret lands beyond the waters as literal islands, perhaps Atlantis, while others see it as a metaphor for realms of consciousness or spiritual states. The ambiguity is deliberate, forcing seekers to reflect deeply rather than accept simple answers. Symbolic language also appears in flood myths and stories of lost civilizations. The waters may represent literal floods, but they also symbolize chaos, cleansing, or the dissolution of old ways. The survival of wisdom after disaster is both a historical possibility and a spiritual truth. Knowledge endures even when structures collapse. In this way, myths serve as both memory and metaphor, preserving lessons in forms that can be retold endlessly. The power of symbolic language lies in its adaptability. A story told thousands of years ago can still resonate today because its symbols remain relevant. They speak to universal experiences: pride, downfall, renewal, hope. Atlantis, described in symbolic terms, becomes more than a city. It becomes a lesson about balance, humility, and the fragility of greatness. By cloaking wisdom in symbols, ancient texts ensured that their truths would survive. They could be dismissed as myth by the casual reader, yet treasured as revelation by the seeker. In this way, symbolic language becomes both a veil and a bridge, hiding knowledge from misuse while guiding those who are ready to discover it. Among the many texts and traditions linked to Atlantis, certain passages stand out as sparks that ignite endless debate. These are the lines that seem to hint at something more than myth, words that scholars, mystics, and seekers have pored over for centuries, each offering their own interpretation. They are tantalizing fragments, like pieces of a puzzle that refuse to fit neatly together, leaving us wondering whether they conceal hidden truths or simply poetic allegory. Plato's dialogues are the most famous source. In Timaeus and Critias, he describes Atlantis as a mighty island empire that existed 9,000 years before his time. That single detail alone has fueled centuries of controversy. Was Plato recounting a genuine historical memory passed down from Egyptian priests, or was he crafting an allegory to illustrate the dangers of arrogance and imbalance? The debate continues, with some insisting that his words are literal history, while others argue they are symbolic lessons disguised as narrative. The emerald tablets, attributed to Thoth, add another layer of intrigue. Passages speak of lands beyond the waters and cycles of destruction and rebirth. To some, these are clear references to Atlantis, a civilization swallowed by the sea, yet remembered through wisdom preserved in symbolic language. To others, they are metaphors for spiritual journeys, describing the rise and fall of consciousness rather than cities. The ambiguity ensures that every reader finds something different, and every interpretation sparks new discussion. Flood myths across cultures also contain passages that invite debate. When texts describe waters rising to cleanse the world, are they recounting literal events, perhaps memories of rising seas at the end of the Ice Age? Or are they symbolic, teaching lessons about humility and renewal? The universality of these stories suggests they may hold echoes of real experiences, yet their symbolic richness makes them timeless. What makes these passages so powerful is their openness. They refuse to give simple answers. instead offering clues that demand reflection. They invite us to question whether history is complete, whether wisdom can be hidden in metaphor, and whether myths may preserve truths long forgotten. In this way, the passages themselves become part of the mystery of Atlantis, not maps to a lost city, but mirrors that reflect our own longing to understand the past. When ancient texts speak of lands beyond the waters, they stir the imagination in ways that few phrases can. To some, these words are poetic metaphors for spiritual realms, places of consciousness that lie beyond ordinary perception. To others, they are tantalizing hints of real geography, islands, continents, or civilizations that once existed across the seas. In the context of Atlantis, this phrase becomes especially intriguing, suggesting that the lost city may have been remembered not as myth alone, but as a distant land swallowed by the ocean. Plato's account of Atlantis describes it as lying beyond the Pillars of Hercules, the straits we now call Gibraltar. This detail places Atlantis in the Atlantic Ocean, a vast expanse that was, for the Greeks, mysterious and largely unexplored. To them, lands beyond the waters meant territories outside the familiar Mediterranean world, places that carried both wonder and danger. The Atlantic was the edge of the known world, and Atlantis was imagined as a mighty empire that thrived there before its downfall. Egyptian traditions, often linked to Thoth, also speak of lands across the waters. The Emerald Tablets contain passages that some interpret as references to distant realms, places where wisdom was preserved after catastrophe. Whether these were literal islands or symbolic descriptions of hidden knowledge, they reinforce the idea that truths lie beyond the boundaries of what we know. The motif of lands beyond the waters appears in many cultures. Polynesian navigators spoke of islands scattered across the Pacific, each carrying its own legends of origin and loss. Norse sagas described voyages to lands across the sea, some real, some imagined. Even in the Americas, myths tell of ancestors arriving from distant shores, guided by stars and currents. These stories suggest that humanity has always looked outward, beyond the horizon, searching for what lies hidden. In the Atlantis narrative, lands beyond the waters serve as both clue and metaphor. They remind us that the world is larger than our maps, that civilizations may have risen and fallen in places we have yet to uncover. They also symbolize the journey of the seeker, the willingness to cross boundaries, to venture into the unknown, and to discover truths that lie just beyond reach. Whether literal islands or symbolic realms, the phrase continues to spark curiosity. It whispers that Atlantis may not be entirely lost, but waiting somewhere beyond the waters for those who dare to seek it. Throughout human history, the idea of lost cities has captivated the imagination. Atlantis may be the most famous, but it is far from alone. Myths and legends across cultures speak of magnificent places that flourished in wisdom and power, only to vanish into the sands, the jungles, or the seas. These stories endure because they embody both mystery and longing, the sense that somewhere, hidden from view, lies a forgotten chapter of humanity's past. In South America, tales of El Dorado inspired countless expeditions. Explorers dreamed of a golden city hidden in the jungles, a place of unimaginable wealth. While no such city was ever found, the legend drove centuries of discovery and reshaped the history of exploration. In Asia, stories of Shambhala describe a hidden kingdom of enlightenment, concealed in the Himalayas, accessible only to the pure of heart. In Africa, traditions speak of cities swallowed by desert sands, their ruins waiting to be uncovered. Each of these legends mirrors Atlantis in its blend of grandeur and disappearance. Lost cities also appear in archaeology. Troy, once thought to be purely mythical, was rediscovered in the 19th century, proving that legends can sometimes conceal historical truth. Similarly, the ruins of Angkor in Cambodia and Machu Picchu in Peru remind us that great civilizations can vanish, leaving behind silent stones that whisper of forgotten glory. These discoveries fuel the belief that Atlantis, too, might one day be found. The idea of lost cities resonates because it speaks to our desire for discovery. It suggests that the world still holds secrets, that beneath the oceans or within the earth lie stories waiting to be told. Atlantis, as the archetype of lost cities, embodies this hope. It is not just a vanished place. It is a symbol of possibility, a reminder that history may be deeper and more complex than we imagine. For those who connect Atlantis to Thoth, the idea of lost cities takes on added meaning. If wisdom was preserved after disaster, then Atlantis is not only a city, but a repository of knowledge, hidden until humanity is ready. In this way, the legend becomes more than geography. It becomes a metaphor for truth itself, lost but never destroyed, waiting patiently to be rediscovered. One of the most compelling themes in the story of Atlantis is the idea that wisdom can survive catastrophe. Civilizations may rise and fall, cities may be swallowed by floods or buried beneath sands, but knowledge, if carefully guarded, endures. This belief is woven into myths across cultures, and it is central to the role of Thoth as the keeper of wisdom. When Plato described Atlantis, he emphasized not only its downfall, but also the memory of its existence, preserved by Egyptian priests. They claimed to have records of events that stretched back thousands of years, far beyond the scope of Greek history. This suggests that even when civilizations collapse, fragments of their stories can be carried forward, safeguarded by those who value them. The priests, in this case, acted as custodians of memory, ensuring that Atlantis was not entirely forgotten. The emerald tablets, attributed to Thoth, echo this theme. They speak of cycles of destruction and rebirth, of wisdom hidden until humanity is ready to receive it. The idea is that knowledge is too precious to be lost, and so it is concealed in texts, symbols, or sacred traditions, waiting for future generations to rediscover. This preservation is not accidental. It is deliberate, a way of protecting truth from being erased by disaster. Flood myths reinforce the same lesson. In Mesopotamia, Utnapishtim preserved life and wisdom by building a great boat. In India, Manu carried sacred knowledge through the waters of destruction. In Greece, Deucalion and Pyrrha repopulated the earth after the flood, ensuring that human memory continued. Each story highlights survival, not only of people, but of knowledge passed down through myth, ritual, and teaching. Atlantis, as a lost city, becomes a symbol of this preservation. Even if its towers and temples were destroyed, its wisdom may have been safeguarded. Perhaps Thoth encoded its truths in symbolic language, ensuring that they would endure even when the city itself was gone. The Hall of Records, said to lie beneath the Sphinx, is often imagined as a repository of such knowledge, a hidden archive waiting to be uncovered. The idea that knowledge survives disaster is both comforting and inspiring. It suggests that truth is resilient, that wisdom cannot be drowned or buried forever. Civilizations may fall, but their lessons remain, carried forward in myth, memory, and mystery. Atlantis, whether real or symbolic, embodies this enduring hope that even in the face of catastrophe, knowledge finds a way to endure. The legend of Atlantis does not exist in isolation. While Plato's dialogues remain the earliest written source, echoes of a lost civilization appear in traditions across the world, woven into myths of floods, golden ages, and vanished lands. These stories, though separated by geography and culture, share striking similarities that suggest a collective memory of something profound. In Egypt, priests were said to have told Solon, the Greek lawgiver, about a mighty civilization that fell long before Athens rose. Their account, preserved by Plato, described Atlantis as a powerful empire that challenged the ancient world before being swallowed by the sea. This Egyptian connection is significant, for Egypt itself was seen as a repository of ancient wisdom, guarded by figures like Thoth, who measured time and recorded truth. If Atlantis was remembered anywhere, it would be in the temples along the Nile. Other traditions carry similar themes. In Mesopotamia, the Epic of Gilgamesh recounts a flood that erased civilizations, leaving only fragments of memory. In India, the tale of Manu describes a wise man who preserved sacred knowledge through a great deluge. In the Americas, indigenous myths speak of lands destroyed by water, with survivors carrying wisdom to new generations. These stories, though culturally distinct, resonate with the idea of Atlantis, a civilization undone by catastrophe, yet remembered through myth. Greek mythology itself is filled with references to vanished realms. The Isles of the Blessed, the Elysian Fields, and other distant lands were imagined as places of perfection, often lying beyond the known world. Atlantis fits neatly into this tradition, a city both real and symbolic, embodying humanity's longing for a golden age. The persistence of these traditions suggests that Atlantis may represent more than a single story. It may be a symbol of collective human memory, a way of explaining the rise and fall of civilizations, the fragility of greatness, and the endurance of wisdom. Whether Atlantis was a literal island or a metaphor for lost ages, its presence in ancient traditions shows that humanity has always carried the idea of forgotten worlds within its imagination. Atlantis endures because it is not confined to one culture. It is a shared myth, a universal reminder that civilizations rise, fall, and leave behind echoes that ripple across time. In those echoes, Atlantis continues to live. The writings attributed to Thoth, particularly the Emerald Tablets, have long been a source of fascination and debate. Their language is layered, symbolic, and deliberately cryptic, inviting readers to look beyond the surface. To interpret Thoth's words is to step into a labyrinth of meaning where every phrase may conceal multiple truths. Some see them as spiritual teachings, others as coded references to lost civilizations, and still others as allegories for the cycles of human existence. One recurring theme in these texts is the idea of cycles: destruction followed by rebirth, decline followed by renewal. Thoth speaks of civilizations rising to greatness, only to fall when they lose balance with cosmic order. For those who connect these passages to Atlantis, the message is clear. The lost city was not simply destroyed, but became part of a larger pattern of rise and fall that defines human history. Atlantis, in this view, is both a literal city and a metaphor for the fragility of greatness. Another theme is the preservation of wisdom. Thoth's words often emphasize that knowledge is never truly lost, only hidden until humanity is ready to receive it. This has led many to believe that clues to Atlantis are encoded in symbolic language, references to lands beyond the waters, or hidden chambers of wisdom that may point to real places or serve as metaphors for spiritual truths. The ambiguity is intentional, ensuring that only those who seek with patience and humility can uncover deeper meaning. Interpreting Thoth's words also requires understanding the cultural context. In Egypt, symbolic language was common, with hieroglyphs carrying multiple layers of meaning. A single image could represent a sound, an idea, or a divine principle. Thoth, as the god of writing, embodied this complexity. His texts were not meant to be read literally, but to be contemplated, decoded, and lived. Over time, Thoth's words influenced traditions far beyond Egypt. At Greek thought, he became Hermes Trismegistus, and his teachings formed the foundation of Hermetic philosophy. Alchemists, mystics, and philosophers across centuries interpreted his writings as guides to transformation, both physical and spiritual. Each interpretation added new layers, ensuring that his words remained alive, adaptable, and endlessly debated. Ultimately, interpreting Thoth's words is less about finding definitive answers and more about engaging with mystery. His language challenges us to think deeply, to question assumptions, and to see wisdom not as a destination but as a journey. Whether they conceal the location of Atlantis or simply remind us of the cycles of human existence. Thoth's words endure because they speak to the timeless quest for truth. Atlantis has always lived at the crossroads between myth and history, a place where imagination and scholarship collide. On one side, it is treated as allegory, a cautionary tale crafted by Plato to illustrate the dangers of arrogance and imbalance. On the other, it is examined as a possible historical account, a memory of a real civilization preserved through Egyptian priests and passed down to the Greeks. This tension between myth and theory is what keeps the debate alive, generation after generation. Those who see Atlantis as myth argue that Plato's purpose was philosophical, not historical. His dialogues often used stories to convey deeper truths, and Atlantis fits neatly into this pattern. The city's downfall serves as a warning. Even the greatest civilizations can fall if they lose harmony with the divine order. In this view, Atlantis is not a literal island, but a metaphor for human pride, a timeless lesson disguised as narrative. Yet others insist that Plato's account was too detailed to be pure invention. He described Atlantis's geography, its concentric rings of land and water, its temples, and its fleets, with remarkable specificity. He even placed it beyond the Pillars of Hercules, suggesting a real location in the Atlantic Ocean. For these readers, Plato was not inventing, but recording a memory passed down from Egyptian priests who claimed to have records stretching back thousands of years. If true, Atlantis may represent a forgotten chapter of human history, erased by catastrophe, but preserved in myth. The Emerald Tablets, attributed to Thoth, add another layer to the debate. Their symbolic passages about lands beyond the waters and cycles of destruction are interpreted by some as references to Atlantis. Others dismiss them as spiritual allegory, describing the rise and fall of consciousness rather than cities. This ambiguity mirrors the larger tension. Are these texts history disguised as myth, or myth disguised as history. Modern scholars often tread carefully, acknowledging that myths can preserve echoes of real events. Flood stories, for example, may recall rising seas at the end of the Ice Age. Lost city legends may reflect memories of settlements destroyed by disaster. Atlantis, in this sense, could be both myth and history, a symbolic tale rooted in fragments of truth. Ultimately, the debate itself is part of Atlantis's allure. Whether myth or history, the story endures because it speaks to universal themes: the fragility of greatness, the resilience of memory, and the possibility that wisdom survives even when civilizations fall. Atlantis endures not because of certainty, but because of memory, fragile, fragmented, and yet powerful enough to survive across millennia. The question of why Atlantis was remembered is as fascinating as the legend itself. Civilizations rise and fall, countless cities have vanished without a trace, yet Atlantis remains alive in myth, philosophy, and imagination. Its survival in human memory reveals something profound about the way we preserve stories. One reason Atlantis was remembered is the role of storytellers and scribes. Plato's dialogues ensured that the tale was written down, preserved in a form that could be studied and retold. Unlike oral traditions that fade with time, written words endure, carrying fragments of memory across centuries. Plato may have intended Atlantis as allegory, but by recording it, he gave the story permanence. Once written, it could not be forgotten. Another reason lies in the power of symbolism. Atlantis is more than a city. It is a metaphor for greatness undone by arrogance. Such lessons resonate across cultures, reminding humanity of the fragility of balance and the dangers of pride. Because the story carries universal meaning, it continues to be retold, adapted to new contexts, and reimagined for new generations. Its symbolic richness ensures that it never loses relevance. The preservation of wisdom also plays a role. Traditions linked to Thoth and the Emerald Tablets suggest that knowledge can survive catastrophe, hidden until humanity is ready to rediscover it. If Atlantis was remembered, it may be because fragments of its wisdom were encoded in myths, symbols, or sacred texts. Even if the city itself was lost, its lessons were safeguarded, waiting to be uncovered. Finally, Atlantis was remembered because it speaks to human longing. We yearn for connection to something greater, something ancient and profound. The idea of a lost golden age appeals to our imagination, offering both nostalgia and hope. Atlantis whispers that the world may hold secrets yet undiscovered, that beneath the seas or sands lies wisdom waiting to be found. Atlantis survives in memory because it is more than history. It is a story that embodies warning, wonder, and possibility. Whether real or symbolic, it endures because humanity needs it as a reminder of what can be lost, and as inspiration for what might still be found. The legend of Atlantis has not remained confined to ancient texts. In the modern era, explorers, scientists, and dreamers have turned to technology and research to uncover whether Plato's account might point to a real place. These searches reflect humanity's enduring fascination with lost civilizations and the hope that evidence of Atlantis may still lie hidden beneath the earth or sea. In the 19th and 20th centuries, explorers scoured the Atlantic Ocean, the Mediterranean, and even the Caribbean for signs of Atlantis. Many expeditions were fueled more by imagination than evidence, but they laid the groundwork for serious inquiry. The rise of archaeology and oceanography gave researchers new tools to investigate myths with scientific rigor. One of the most compelling modern leads comes from satellite and radar scans of wetlands near Cadiz, Spain. In 2011, researchers identified ring-shaped formations beneath the surface that resembled Plato's description of Atlantis's concentric layout. These findings sparked intense debate, with some arguing they could be remnants of a lost city, while others caution that natural formations may explain the shapes. Still, this site remains one of the strongest candidates for a real-world counterpart to Atlantis. Advances in deep-sea scanning and sonar mapping have allowed scientists to explore the ocean floor in unprecedented detail. Expeditions in the Atlantic and Mediterranean have searched for submerged ruins, though none have produced conclusive evidence. Some researchers suggest that rising seas at the end of the Ice Age may have submerged coastal settlements, fueling flood myths that later evolved into the Atlantis legend. Beyond Spain, theories place Atlantis in diverse locations. Santorini, Greece, linked to the eruption of Thera around 1600 BCE. Antarctica, proposed by fringe theorists who believe shifting ice hides ruins. Caribbean islands, inspired by tales of advanced cultures in the Americas. Each theory reflects attempts to reconcile Plato's account with geological and archaeological evidence, though none have been universally accepted. Modern searches for Atlantis persist because they embody more than archaeology. They represent humanity's longing for discovery, the belief that history may hold forgotten chapters, and the hope that wisdom from the past can be recovered. Whether Atlantis was real or symbolic, the effort to find it keeps the legend alive, blending science with imagination. Atlantis remains elusive, but the modern search ensures it is never forgotten. Each expedition, each scan, each theory adds to the story, reminding us that mysteries endure not only in the past, but in the present quest to uncover them. The search for Atlantis often hinges on fragments of text, cryptic passages, and mysterious symbols. Yet, one of the most important questions is whether these clues were ever meant to be taken literally. Could it be that the descriptions of Atlantis, the Emerald Tablets, and the flood myths are not maps to a physical city, but symbolic lessons encoded in story? Plato's account is the starting point. He described Atlantis in great detail, its concentric rings of land and water, its temples, its fleets, and its downfall. But Plato was a philosopher, not a historian. His dialogues often used allegory to illustrate moral truths. Many scholars argue that Atlantis was never intended as a geographical location, but as a metaphor for hubris, imbalance, and the dangers of unchecked power. In this view, the lost city is symbolic of human pride, a cautionary tale disguised as history. The Emerald Tablets, attributed to Thoth, deepen the mystery. Their passages speak of lands beyond the waters and cycles of destruction and rebirth. These could be references to real places, but they could also symbolize spiritual journeys, states of consciousness, or cosmic patterns. The ambiguity is deliberate. Ancient texts often cloaked wisdom in symbols, ensuring that only those prepared to seek deeper meaning could uncover it. Flood myths across cultures also invite symbolic interpretation. The waters may represent literal floods, but they also symbolize chaos, cleansing, and renewal. The survival of wisdom after disaster is both a historical possibility and a spiritual truth. Knowledge endures even when civilizations collapse. In this sense, Atlantis may not be a city swallowed by the sea, but a metaphor for the cycles of rise and fall that define human history. The possibility that clues are symbolic does not diminish their value. On the contrary, it enriches them. Symbols are timeless, adaptable, and universal. They allow stories to resonate across cultures and generations, carrying lessons that remain relevant long after their origins are forgotten. Atlantis, interpreted symbolically, becomes more than a lost city. It becomes a mirror reflecting humanity's struggles with pride, balance, and renewal. Whether literal or symbolic, the clues endure because they challenge us to look deeper. They remind us that wisdom is often hidden in metaphor, waiting for those who are willing to see beyond the surface. Atlantis may or may not exist as a place, but as a symbol. It continues to guide us toward truths that are as relevant today as they were thousands of years ago. Atlantis remains one of the most enduring enigmas in human history. Despite centuries of debate, yet, rather than fading, the legend continues to thrive. The question is not only whether Atlantis existed, but why the story itself refuses to disappear. At its core, Atlantis is a narrative, a tale of greatness undone by arrogance, of wisdom lost to catastrophe. Stories with universal themes endure because they resonate across cultures and generations. Atlantis is not just about a city. It is about human pride, balance, and the fragility of civilization. These lessons remain relevant, ensuring the myth never loses its appeal. Humanity is drawn to mysteries. The idea that there may be hidden truths beneath the seas or sands sparks curiosity and imagination. Atlantis embodies this allure, suggesting that the world still holds secrets waiting to be uncovered. The unknown keeps the legend alive, inviting exploration and speculation. Atlantis sits at the intersection of myth and history. Plato's account is detailed enough to suggest a real place, yet symbolic enough to serve as allegory. This ambiguity fuels debate. Was it a memory of a lost civilization, or a philosophical lesson disguised as narrative? The inability to resolve this tension ensures that Atlantis remains a subject of fascination. Texts like the Emerald Tablets and flood myths across cultures reinforce the idea that wisdom survives disaster. Even if Atlantis itself was destroyed, its memory may have been preserved in symbolic language, myths, or sacred traditions. This preservation keeps the legend alive, reminding humanity that knowledge endures even when cities fall. Ultimately, Atlantis endures because it reflects us. It is a mirror of our hopes and fears, the dream of a golden age, the warning of downfall, and the possibility of rediscovery. The mystery is not only about whether Atlantis existed, but about what it means for us today. Atlantis survives because it is more than a city. It is a timeless mystery, a story that challenges us to seek, to question, and to imagine. And as long as humanity longs for discovery, the legend of Atlantis will never fade. The journey through the legend of Atlantis has carried us across myths, philosophies, and mysteries that span thousands of years. From Thoth's role as the keeper of wisdom to Plato's dialogues, from flood myths to modern searches, we've explored how this story has endured, not simply as a tale of a lost city, but as a mirror reflecting humanity's deepest questions. Atlantis is remembered because it embodies universal themes: the fragility of greatness, the resilience of wisdom, and the possibility that knowledge can survive even when civilizations fall. Whether it was a real place swallowed by the sea, or a symbolic lesson encoded in myth, Atlantis continues to inspire seekers, scholars, and dreamers alike. Its mystery endures because it is more than history. It is a timeless reminder of balance, humility, and the human longing for discovery. The emerald tablets, Thoth's words, and flood traditions all reinforce the idea that wisdom is never truly lost. It may be hidden, waiting patiently for humanity to rediscover it. Atlantis, in this sense, is not only a city, but a symbol of truth itself, fragile yet enduring, concealed yet eternal. And so, as we close this story, we recognize that Atlantis is not just about the past, it is about us, here and now, searching for meaning, balance, and connection. The legend lives on because it speaks to something timeless within the human spirit. Now, let the waves grow quiet, the myths rest gently, and the echoes of Atlantis fade into the night. The story has been told, the wisdom preserved, and the mystery remains, waiting for tomorrow's seekers. Good night.